What's that sound? It's for amusement only, the EM and Bingo Pinball Podcast.
Welcome back to For Amusement Only. This is Nick Baldridge. Today I thought I'd talk about cabinet repaints. And this can be a touchy subject. Some collectors feel that cabinets should wear their patina proudly. I have a game right now that has troll sex carved into the side, and I think I'm ready to get that one repainted. So that's the GG project for those of you following along at home here. So, since that's kind of top of mind, I'm planning out how I'm going to do the repaint. And there's several things to consider. First of all, the logistics. How do you handle a repaint? And what do you use as far as paint in order to ensure that you get adequate coverage, the appropriate factory overspray, and so forth. So, I'm going to call out Steve Smith again because most everything I've learned about cabinet repaints I've learned from him. He has graciously let me try my hand and taught me how he did his restores for Golden Gate and Williams Riverboat. So, the first thing is to cut your stencils. And you need to cut a separate one for each color on each side. On some games you can just flip them over and reuse them, but I wouldn't do that personally. The reason being that you might transfer some dried paint from one side to the other without intending to. So, I cut stencils for both sides. And what I do is figure out the order in which the stencils need to be applied. There's always a base color for the cabinet, which can be rolled on. You don't have to spray the base color, but you can. It doesn't really matter, though. What really matters is that you spray on the stencil colors. So Gottlieb typically used 2 or 3 different colors. White is their base, and then red and blue typically. So you get that red, white, and blue effect. But it varied a bit by game. So you pencil in the design on tracing paper, and then you carry that over to poster board. And you can get poster board for about 50 cents a sheet. It takes a couple to do a side of a cabinet, and takes one to do a coin door, if it's got any graphics on it. And then you just spray them in order. So you have to take the side rails off and any other hardware. So again, on a Gottlieb wedge head, you got to take the back glass out of the head and tape off the backboard. I'm way too lazy to take out the backboard, even though it's not incredibly difficult to do so. It's just more trouble than it's worth. So I just take newspaper and tape it so that any overspray from the base coat, if I spray it, or the graphics from the head won't get into the backboard and discolor it. Taking the side rails off, it's a good idea to apply a bit of heat depending on the age of the game. And you, on wedge heads again, they applied the side rails with these spiral nails They have to be worked out a little bit and then grasped with very firm pliers or cutters or the like, and then you can twist to pull them out. Usually that ruins the nail. I would just replace them rather than reuse. But if you're careful, theoretically, you could reuse it. Take the side rails off. They're usually not attached by more than the nails, but it does depend on the age. And then you got access to the original color, usually. So match that up against what color that you picked out and make sure that the white is the appropriate shade of white. You want to take the playfield out of the game, and again, because I'm lazy, and this actually makes it harder to move the cabinet, but I leave the bottom board in and just tape that off with newspaper. The insides of the cabinets were not sprayed below a particular area. It almost has an overspray effect, so they just kind of ran it in a line up the inside of the cabinet walls. So the important thing is just to tape off any area that you don't want painted. And spray or roll your base coat. And that has to be sprayed on the inside as well. When the playfield comes down, you don't want that inside to be the dull, yellowed, nicotine-stained color that it is currently. It's better that it match the outside. So once you got your base coat on, you put your stencils on in order, and you allow time to dry for each thing. Now, on Gottlieb games, they used either spatter or webbing, and this is applied on the base coat before you apply your stencil. So the webbing extends to every area of the cabinet, but it's masked really well in areas where the stencil is applied. Spatter and webbing can both be done via a stiff bristle brush, or if you have the appropriate equipment, basically a spray gun, you can do it with that as well. And it takes the appropriate mixture of thinner to paint, and you'll have to experiment a lot to find the right one. It's also going to depend on your gun and how good that is, but the end result you should be pleased with if you take the time to figure out how it was done initially. And less is more. The webbing, the intended effect of the webbing or the spatter was to reduce the effect of blemishes to your eye. So if the cabinet got scuffed up or scratched because a bar patron was a little rough with it, then it'd be less noticeable if there was webbing applied. I've seen repainted cabs without webbing, and it looks awful. It just does not look right. Similarly, repainted cabs with too much webbing look bad as well. So my Pop card has a repainted cab, and it's got way too much webbing. And that came from a spray can, and it looks really bad. So I'm going to give that the old restore treatment here one day after I get some of the other eyesores taken care of. But as each stencil is applied, they build on top of each other. So on GG, there's a circular cutout that needs to be made. And that circular cutout is slightly larger for one color, slightly smaller for the other. And it is layered on top of each other. So again, you allow the last color to dry, then you paint on the next color. Then you flip the cab over and do it to that side. It's important to mark each of your stencil pieces and make sure that the alignment is correct. Take the extra time to do that. You don't want to have to repaint the base coat more than once if you can avoid it. But if you make a mistake, you can always start over. don't forget, before you start painting, you want to sand down and make sure your cabinet is nice and smooth. This will enhance the appearance, but it'll also take out any of the surface blemishes that occur over time. The Trollsex on GG is a good example. So, once you've got it sanded down, if there are pieces of the cabinet that are actually missing, like someone has gouged out around the coin door trying to break into the game, you want to build that up with an automotive body filler. I use Bondo, which is, the current wisdom. And that works really well. It's a 2-part formula. It's a putty and a hardener in a tube. And the more hardener you put into the putty that you're mixing up, the faster it dries. So if you are pressed for time, then you can put in more hardener. And if you want to have time to work it into the appropriate shape, then you put in less hardener. Once it's hardened, you can sand it, scrape it, paint it, and it reacts similarly to as wood would. Once that's all done and painted and everything, then it's time to reassemble. And when you do so, it's important to note that the legs will bite into that fresh paint. So one thing that you can do is lacquer the cabinet, which is what they did in the factory. Another thing you could do is make little felt standoffs for your legs, which will protect the cabinet from the pressure of the legs. A thin lacquer coat will give it a nice shine, and it'll enhance the appearance greatly. So I would highly recommend that, and that's what they did on the factory floor. So why not, if you're going to all this trouble, why not try to emulate that as best you can? Once you've finished your repaint, the game will look new. And if you followed previous advice about preserving the back glass or replacing it, making your own translite, then all you have left is the playfield, and we'll get into playfield touch-up another time. That's not something to be entered into lightly. Similarly to back glass touch-up. A note about overspray. Some people hate the look of overspray, and some people like it. I happen to like it, because I have several cabinets that from the factory had a bit of overspray. So the trick is not to overspray all the time. And poster board is something that I use because it allows for overspray. So you weight down the poster board on the cabinet. You don't adhere it to the cabinet. And then you spray. And a little bit will spray underneath of the edge of the poster board where you've cut out your stencil, but the majority will be where it's supposed to be. This gives it a softer appearance than a really hard edge. And that's a look that I happen to prefer, but everybody has their own taste. So you do as you will, and I'll do as I will, and the world will keep on moving. So, thanks again for listening. My name again is Nick Baldridge. You can reach me at foramusementonlypodcast@gmail.com. You can find us online at foramusementonly.libsyn.com, and you can listen to us on iTunes, Stitcher, Pocket Casts, via Facebook, via RSS, on our website, and I'll talk to you next time. Thanks again.